I think we're good to begin our second talk. We'll ask for our lights to come back down, and we'll begin with our second presentation here this morning. Dr. Karla Williamson is your next speaker. Dr. Karla Williamson has a PhD from the University of Aberdeen and is an Inuk from Greenland. I just spent some time in the Arctic over the last month, and I can tell you, you have a beautiful, beautiful territory up there, Dr. Williamson. Since moving to Canada, Karla undertook a bachelor's and master's degrees in her third language, which is English, through the University of Saskatchewan. Her master's thesis dealt with Inuit child-rearing practices as these relate to Inuit relationship to land in Pengertang, Nunavut. Dr. Williamson was appointed the executive director of the Arctic Institute of North America at the University of Calgary, the first female executive director since its inception in 1945. Karla taught at the University of Saskatchewan for 16 years on matters dealing with Canada's multiculturalism, anti-racism, and Aboriginal epistemologies as they relate to education. Think Indigenous. I want you to put your hands together and please welcome to the stage kindly Dr. Karla Williamson.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Whew. Wow, this is very intimidating, I tell you. So I'm up here to actually be talking about something else. So I provide you with a little bit of maps because sometimes it's very difficult to actually imagine what the Arctic is about. So I do have the first one. So I'll just, yeah, there you go. So Chris Scribe invited me to do this red talk, and I had no idea what that was about. And I thought I better turn red. But the title in itself as being that Think Indigenous really had a huge call to me insofar that we really need to do that of talking about ourselves in a good, healthy way, and in our day and age, that's a very difficult call to do. And secondly, I really wanted to do that with talking about the dreams. And I go to Chris, I'm going to be talking about dreams, you know, and he goes like, oh yeah, wet dreams? And I said, no. But I'll leave that to him and his wife, that's for sure. Yep. So what I wanted to do was indeed doing that of talking about our epistemology insofar that as holistic people that we are all Indigenous all around the world, there's a lot of dreams that are involved in that. And unfortunately, in this day and age where we are very much informed by the Western ways of knowing, of Eurocentrism and whatnot, our dreams have been kind of put aside as being something a little bit crazy. It's like when we start talking about our dreams that something doesn't quite click as far as the Western science is concerned. Anyway, so I'm here, and I've been living here in Saskatoon for many years. This gives me a very great opportunity to thank people for inviting me here, for allowing me to be on this beautiful creation. I've been very honored to be that, so this gives me that opportunity to be grateful. It's a difficult one to be an outsider in many ways, to be Indigenous and outsider, but I've been very, very grateful insofar that I learned so much from the First Nations communities and Métis communities here in Saskatchewan that has given me a lot of good dreams. So I am at the University of Saskatchewan. I'm assistant professor at the university, at Foundations. Frankly, I am the first Inuk tenured professor. Here in Canada, that's what I am. So I'm really very pleased about that. So the title that I have is Dreams and Inuit Epistemology. So just to give you an indication where we come from, Arctic is our homeland. It's not a weird place, But I tell you, when I come here to Saskatoon, I go like the people know that I'm from the Arctic. As soon as it hits minus 52, they go like, oh, you must feel at home. I have never, ever encountered so much cold as I came here to Saskatoon. Yeah, as you can see, I'm originally from Greenland, and I came here to Saskatoon very young, and just barely 24 when I came here. And frankly, I've been here since then. This is a good place to make kids, you know? Yeah. So I do have beautiful 2 children, and I also have 3 grandchildren who are growing up in the Inuit and speak my dialect. And this is something that we need to really be proud of, because we live in an era where all our languages, indigenous languages, are disappearing. So for me to have 3 grandchildren that speak my language, picking it up and go like, what the heck is going on with you, you know? It's just wow. So Arctic is for us a beautiful home. We call it our Nunavut, Nunavut, and various places like that all across the Arctic. That's what we have. We have a deep, deep-seated feeling of incredible amount of love to the land that has given us so much as peoples. Anywhere in Greenland, Canada, United States, in form of Alaska, and that of Siberia. We love our land, and by loving it, we think that it loves us back. So Greenland was indeed a colony of Denmark. So my second language is Danish. So I was brought up to be a little Dane, speaking the language and learning how the plants are doing in Denmark, and never learned anything about the seals that we eat daily. So I'm just going to go on to the next one, namely that of the assimilation that we have gone through in terms of the development. It always comes with that hope of development. But in serious ways, it is that of colonizing us. And I think I can honestly say that all of us were involved in this, insofar that we have gone through various kinds of education systems in Canada and elsewhere, where become part of the nation. And what happened in these ones here, looking at it from the point of view of nonlinear ways of knowing, it becomes very linear. It becomes that we buy into Monia ways of being, or Kasunak ways of being, speaking the language, walking the way we do, and whatnot. But what always kind of gets me back in terms of relearning is indeed the fact that our nations, First Nations, the Métis and Inuit, were actually doing extremely well on their own for millennia without the help of the states. That was the case. And for us to understand that sometimes is a very difficult one, because the history, as they were saying, is so determined by the non-First Nations, non-Métis, and non-Inuit. So we are in many ways living this linear way of knowing, maybe admiring it at times, but we certainly know that it takes a lot out of us people that way. So at this point, Greenland now is in the midst of looking at creating new constitutional laws that would see the nation becoming a nation on its own without being colonized any longer. And again, I'm one of these members of the commission looking at creating how we become citizens within our nation. Probably one of the first ones in North America as indigenous people that will be a free nation that way. And imagine, I'm sitting in a commission that decides who's going to be there as men, ha. And who's going to be there as women, ha, right? Yeah, it's a lot of pressure, but it's a very, very nice prospect to be dreaming about, that's for sure. So I'm going to stay here for a little while, because when I was starting to do my PhD, I thought, oh my gosh, you know, it's going to be just great. And I'm going to go back home because I speak my language fluently. And the informants are going to be speaking to me in my language. That's going to be great. So I wanted to figure out how the men and women are equal to one another. That's what we say, that we are egalitarian in our society. And I go like, how? How is it our ancestors kept on saying that we are equal to one another? Where in this situation that we are in the linear way of knowing, we know for sure that women have been denigrated to the extent that they had to prove themselves to be human beings. So how is it that our ancestors kept on saying that we are equal? So I went back home and talked to quite a number of women, called them up and said, you'll be interested in doing this research with me to see what it means to be equal across gender. So we organized ourselves in old church. We are Lutheran by Christian denomination. And one of the questions was, in order for us to try to find out how we are equal, I'd like you to go and ask these women, old women who lost their husbands and a number of their kids, how they dealt with this inner strength. I go like, what the heck? In this gender equality, I have to go there and ask these women. So of course, as a good little anthropologist being trained, and I went and interviewed a number of women who had lost their husbands, lost a number of kids. And one woman in particular started calling me, and every time I went to talk to her, she kept on talking about dreams. And she knew that I was doing my PhD work. And I go like, what the heck? Shut up. You know that this is about PhD, and what do dreams have anything to do with it? I was absolutely dumbfounded. So of course, as a trained anthropologist, novice anthropologist, I couldn't just do that of throwing away. But I tell you what, some of the dreams that she had, not only was she talking about her dreams herself, and then she started talking about somebody else's dream, you know? And it's like, what the heck is that? Where do I find the strength in this? And how is that egalitarian principle to the men? So I listened really, really hard. I thought for quite some time, what the heck I do with this? One of the stories that she told me was, okay, she lived in a place that's not very far away from the burial grounds. And one time she goes like, you know, Carla, I have to tell you a story. And this is a story of a guy not living far away from me. And I know that he was dying. He and his wife are older people. But, you know, I used to go in and borrow a cup of sugar or a cup of flour, you know, just an excuse for me to go in and visit with them. And one time I got in, and all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, that poor guy has been sleeping. Maybe he's actually dying. But she was so embarrassed about her coming into the place just like that, and said, oh, you were on your way up there, were you? Up to heaven, right? And he goes like, oh, well, maybe, because, I mean, he was at the end of his days, right? And so what the heck did you dream? Did you see heaven? What did you see, she says, insisting on talking to him. And he goes like, oh, yeah, you know what? I actually dreamt that I was going all the way up these long, long steps. And at the top of that steps, there was a huge, beautiful house. Oh my God, you just about reached heaven and I woke you up, she says. And so who did you see, she goes on. Oh, I saw this and that, and the guy was making a very, very concerted effort to make sure that she understood who she met in that house. And she, in return, made sure that I understood exactly who she was talking about. And I go like, now what does that have to do with strength? Yeah, so the end of the story, she said, you know, I didn't think about that dream for the longest time, but I knew exactly who who these individuals were that he saw in this big, big house. And it wasn't until about 15 years later she goes like going back and up and down the stairs. Oh my God, my dear friend that passed away about 15 years ago. And then she realized that each of these individuals that he was mentioning in his dream that he saw, they had their graveyard right next to him. Each one of them. So I go like, my hair is just curling up now, right? And I go like, oh my gosh, I'm actually listening to her from this point of view of linear way of knowing and not really paying attention to the way in which that she finds these knowledge systems to be empowering. For her to be actually talking about dreams that way. And I go like, hey, white kid, better listen to this one here. And that's when I get into this next one. Ooh, not working. Yeah. So this is, in reality, what I found that all the conversations that you can do in our own indigenous languages, whatever these are about paradigm shift. So you have to listen very differently because, go back to the first one, please. In this one here, this is empowering to the white people, white men in particular. But in this other one, we have to just simply do that of figuring out how people go about talking and what they're talking about, because my understanding all of a sudden is the fact that when people talk in whatever languages, they are actually materializing the philosophies within these different kinds of languages. And that's what she was talking about, dreams. And I thought, I just better do something about this myself because she's telling me something else than what I have been trained in that Western way of knowing. So among the Inuit, we talk about whole human beings. Inuk tamat. Can you say that? Inuk tamat? Yeah. So we are talking about a holistic person. And as individuals, we are just bodies. And some of them are really good looking. Some are really like, I don't know. Yeah. And that's the case. So, but we are just bodies, whether male or female. We are just bodies. But that's just 1/3 of us. Can you see that? It's just 1/3 of us. So all the stuff that we are learning in education is actually just 1/3 of who we are. Memorizing diddle-da, it's not really doing anything. But for the Inuit, what's really very important is to understand the holistic point of view. So not only do we have bodies, but we also have breath. We breathe in and out. And when the breath leaves the body, it dies. It basically dies. The human being, the body dies without the breath. Do you agree with that? Yeah, so the breath is part of it. But also breath, the anarsak, can you say that? Anarsak? Anarsak also happens to be the name of the person. And that's the one that actually is really connected directly to the universe. The anarsak that Leroy, little child, was talking about yesterday, really has a home in the universe. So when somebody dies, the name, the soul, goes right back to the universe. And then it's our responsibility to kind of call them back and ask them to come and join us back as names. So this is why little kids in our communities are named after the elders and whatnot. And we don't have any gender differentiation, so it could be a little girl named after my husband. I have a little girl who is actually named after my husband, and I love her to death. She evokes in me the love that I had for my past husband. It's like ridiculous, but it's real true. I see her and all of that love that I had, and maybe lost it, all of a sudden comes about. It's like unbelievable. the food that she didn't want, she just set aside, I eat it, I'm starting crying right there. So that's what it is. And Good is indeed that of the naming system, breath, and the one that connects us to the universe. The one that I was going to be talking about is exactly that of Damnok. Can you say that? Damnok? And Damnok is 1/3 of us. That one is the one that is related to the spirit, the land, and that of the animals. It is through that we are able to kind of have this sense as indigenous peoples that we belong to the part, we belong to the creation, that allow ourselves to see who we are in line of the land. And it's a powerful thing because all of us have a shadow that's cast on the land when we are out on the land. Whether you are out there in the moonshine or sunshine, doesn't matter. There's always a shade that you can never erase. And that's the one that calls us to be part of the land. So remember that when you go out there, when you see your shade or shadow, that's part of the land. That's the one that is claimed by the land. So that's why we say land is alive. It knows how we tread, how we go about things, and can make just judgments on us. It's also the same thing with animals. They know that we are there. But it's also that one that allows us to be able to kind of connect with the animals in form of helping spirits. That's the one that really gets going on that. So the dreams that she was talking about that I did not really understand at the beginning were indeed coming from that of Damnikut, because she had no control over them. Like in that linear way of knowing, we think we can control things in a way that's tangible, but in our worldviews and our ways of being in indigenous communities, we have things that we know is beyond the human control. So Chris can have his wet dream, right? But in reality, the dreams come exactly from that time when creation was created. And we are part of it. That's why it's just so wonderful. It's just so wonderful to hear and listen to the kids talking about their dreams because they appear to be latently there. It's a human capacity to do that. And frankly, people who are not really well connected to that aspect, we say are not really human beings. So in our communities, many of the elders who would know us, they can very, very easily make judgment about us, whether we are holistic people that have no soul or that do not have any spirit. They can easily just like that see that in us. That's what they do. So dreams in that regard are very latent. It's very, very powerful. It's also there that you can actually kind of ground yourself and get going on seeing the other parts of the creation. We talk in our communities, we talk about the worldview from the point of view of under this world, other than this reality that we see right now, that there's realities that we need to talk about. In my community, men and women talk about premonitions. They know exactly who's going to be seeing what. They know exactly when they're going around the corner what's going to be happening. It's already there because it already existed right there before. They know. That's premonition, right? We have no control over it, but that's where it comes from. In my community, we also have people that say, "Takaku isilik." Can you say that? Takamigu isilik. Yeah, that means a person that sees through the veins, the blood veins. So they are able to see things very, very differently and experience those very, very differently. I have an old lady that says, you know, I'm elderly now at this point in my life, but I'm always prepared to meet some of my friends dying. oh, I know that somebody is going to be saying this. So, and she does this. In her dreams, she'll be dreaming about 3 little red plants. And she knows exactly at that point that somebody is going to be coming in to say that some of her friends passed away. And this way she prepares herself really well, emotionally, not to be caught by any surprise. That's what she does. That's what this Good gets to that point. I have then a few things that I wanted to share with you. These are some of the artwork that I have back home, in my own home here in Saskatoon. And these are the ones that are imaginations on how we actually create these creatures that resemble a little bit of seal, a little bit of rabbit, sort of depending on what you need as a person, that you can put these things together. But that really means that you appreciate the sentient beings of animals, that non-human beings that have very, very great potency that can influence us and help us. And they become then helping spirits. So male and female have very different potency in that regard. So a caribou male and that of a caribou female, they have different systems of knowledge. They have different ways of doing things. So we appreciate that. So we go and kind of shop for these. It's not like shopping at the mall here. It's shopping for different kinds of potencies that you can find in nature. That's what we do, what we are good at. So in that moment, you can dream of your own weaknesses as a person, but then dream about which animals, in case of the Inuit, which animals suits you best for you to be able to kind of get the maximum state of being in that sense. So today, this plays a huge role. Oh, end of one. There's another picture of a little polar bear that I had put in, and that's what we do. So today, the adoration in form of jewelry is a very common one, in form of earrings, and we all speak to the very essence of these powerful beings, and these are the ones that we want to call upon for ourselves to be exactly being able to kind of inherit that. So going back, so dreams for me have, if I can go back, maybe. Dreams for us really have meaning in a way that is able to enable us to be able to become holistic. So when we are talking about indigenous paradigms and indigenous ways of knowing, we really, really need to pay attention to the dreams. It's not a dream of becoming a white person, but dreams that come from our nature, that inform us who we are, what we are about, and how we can actually carry ourselves through life. So honestly, the woman who told me all about her dreams is the one that actually taught me that we think differently, and that we as educators, as people that are obtaining PhDs, really need to pay attention to how conversations go, because they are set in their mind and sharing it with you. That's what they do. So today, we certainly like to have our little kids and grandchildren to be as holistic as possible. We are now recalling the ancient names from our communities, because Christianity did not allow our names to be taken into works. So my 3 grandchildren are all named Inuktitut names. Myself, Karla, is actually a cousin of mine who passed away before me. I do have 6 names beside, I do have 5 other names beside Karla, and I use them a lot because of the fact that they are the ones that give me that anasak, the ones that remind me of the fact that I have a universal truth through that name. But then again, I also have a shadow on the earth, and I have a lots of shadow here in Saskatchewan because I love this land. I just love it. Just so great, so beautiful. And that's how we beautify ourselves. So I would say that through that spirit, a lot of the songs have been created through that. A lot of the dances have been created through that. A lot of the creativity that excels in our communities all across the world as indigenous peoples, that's where it comes from. Our languages come from that. Our belief system comes from that. And I'm going to leave it at that and hoping to see that you'll be able to see yourselves as holistic people. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Dr. Karla Williamson, please.
Thank you so much.
Hey.
Thank you. Thank you.